I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Dover School Committee for Tuesday, September 29th, 2020. This open meeting is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020. Information on how to join remote school committee meetings and meeting agendas are posted on the Dover-Sherburne District website. And please note that this meeting is being recorded and that anything that you broadcast could be captured by the recording. So we actually have community comments first on the agenda, but we anticipate that many of the comments will pertain to items that will be addressed in the following reports. So, and that includes the opportunity to have our younger students learning in the building more as deemed safe and reasonable by our boards of health and administration. So we've added an update on the potential move to phase 2 to the Superintendents Report, which is item 3 on our agenda. So having said that, so we don't then answer a lot of questions that you already have, I would recommend that we hold community comments until after the reports, because I think a lot of those questions and concerns will be addressed there. Does that sound reasonable to you? Okay. So having said that, we're very excited to have Dr. Reineman's very first principal report. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Brooke. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. It's so nice to see all of you here. I have submitted my report talking about the opening of school. We are so happy to see teachers and students back in the building. It's starting to get a rhythm. The pace and rhythm of having 2 separate schools with the A cohort and the B cohort is starting to get some ground. We've been talking about flex and grace as the things that we need to get through and get started this through the school year. So thank you to everyone who has shown us flex and grace as we've been working our way through. The report also notes several new staff members, some of whom are working in our remote schoolhouse and some who are in the building. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, team, does anyone want to start with a question? I can see all of you, I think. If you want to wait a sec, I have a question.
I had a perfect report.
Yeah, actually I have 2 questions, Deb. One is about the Wednesdays. Could you just give us an update on how the Wednesdays are being used or kind of intended to be used as time goes forward, and what kind of learnings maybe there have been from that? Mm-hmm. And then the other question was how the classrooms that aren't occupied each day, are they being utilized, or to what extent? Do you have any insight into that? So those would be my thinking.
Excellent, good questions. So I'll do the second one first because it's a little bit neater to do. Every classroom has a partner. So for example, Corinne Cummings, who's on my screen right here, hi Corinne, has a partner room with Ken Wadness. So Corinne is in on Thursdays and Fridays, and Ken is in on Mondays and Tuesdays. So when Ken is in, he has access to both rooms plus the project room. So all of those spaces get used when he is there. Wednesday, we're able to clean the building completely and run our electrostatic gun on Wednesdays. And then Corinne has access to both rooms on Thursday, Friday. So all the rooms are getting used except the occasional, I think we have 2 empty classrooms that are actually furniture storage because we had to move so much furniture out of the classrooms. So those rooms are nearly full of empty furniture and they aren't used for anything other than storing furniture. So every space gets used and every space gets cleaned. As to the Wednesdays, you knew this was coming. Wednesdays have been, excuse me, screen.
You can't go.
No, it's the cat, I'm sorry. Wednesdays have turned out to be an interesting piece. Part of what happens during the school day, most people don't see. So for example, parents have now been privy to watching teachers build the classroom environment. Those first few weeks in school are vital times when teachers are establishing classroom rules, setting up routines, finding out who their learners are as people and humans. so that they can set a safe space for learning. And so now parents have had a kind of a half an ear into that for 2 or 3 days a week as parents as teachers are building that environment. The second part of that is that we also have a lot of things that happen, such as prep and planning, which parents wouldn't see either. So when our cherubs in Kim Delaney's class trot off to PE, Kim then has time to do prep and planning with her class, her peers, her teammates. And you wouldn't see that being at home, but we lose that in being the full in the day. We have some prep, but not as much as we did before. And the full remote days, it's really hard to do any prep. That whole day is taken up with, so far, ironing out glitches with online learning. So a lot of that prep and planning is moved to Wednesdays. So Wednesday is full of common planning times for all 6 of our grade levels, our specialists, our FLES teachers. Did I miss anyone, Jim? There's like nine CPTs we go to on Wednesdays. So those teachers are all planning during that time. They're also offering morning meeting and closing meeting each day for their students. And a lot of them are offering office hours. Many grade levels have a special, but they have less screen time with their teacher. And that's what's proving to be interesting. We're talking about asynchronous learning. We're now talking about independent learning. I think they're the same. But they're time when students are learning without necessarily their teacher on the screen. So that's a day that we're looking to figure out how to balance well for the needs of the teachers and for the needs of the students and families. So you've hit right on our area of growth that we'll be working on for the next few weeks.
Well, I appreciate your transparency, and it's always helpful to have an opportunity to teach those who aren't in the buildings, you know, what's happening behind the scenes and help us appreciate more what you're all doing. So thank you. So thank you. I'm glad you had the opportunity to listen. I know we're making this up, right? We've never done this before, so we're all doing the best we can, and we appreciate that. And thank you and all the educators I can see here on the screen. So thank you.
Yep. Flex and grace.
Flex and grace. Any other questions? Go Sarah and then Leslie. Just saw you.
Well, first, I just want to say to everyone in the district leadership team, to Dr. Reineman and Mr. Carnes, and to all of the teachers that are here and that aren't able to join us tonight, thank you. Because from my perspective, the first couple of weeks of school have really gone very smoothly. I'm sure there have been things that have gone wrong and things that we've recovered from and things maybe that have surprised us as to how well they have gone. But one thing that is remarkably clear is the dedication of our team and how grateful I think all of us parents and kids are to have the opportunity for some return to normalcy in in-person instruction. And I was just curious, Dr. Reineman, from your perspective, kind of from the 20,000 foot level, what would you say has gone well or better than expected during these first couple weeks? And what areas do you think we need to do some more ironing out?
Sure, thank you. I thought when the teachers came in for those first 10 days was the most impressive thing I could see. For them coming in, making the entrance back into the building, setting up their rooms, wearing their masks. And then our friends came in, our littler friends. They have been amazing with wearing their masks, following the rules, thinking about 6 feet around them, going to recess with a mask on. Yeah, they griped a little bit. They got over it. The lunchroom. So we're getting ready for open house. We're taking pictures like mad so you can see what the lunchroom looks like. They like that even. I think they're so happy to be back and with us and have some routine. So there were my oh wows. So I would say that, having a new partner in Jim Carn was the most amazing thing, but I knew that was a good decision. So that wasn't a surprise. So thank you, Jim. The thing that we're working on, those Wednesdays, getting those ironed out. A lot of technology glitches that we can't tell. Is it the device? Is it the family Wi-Fi? Is it the headphones that they're using aren't quite the right? So there's like hardware things that we're just trying to figure out the answers to. So that's taking some time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I will say the Wednesday thing that is across the district too. It's a you know, it's a challenging day to figure out how to utilize it optimally and from both sides. So Leslie, do you want to go?
Yes, so Deb actually answered my question. I wanted to give a shout out to the teachers, George and Vic's teachers. I have a front row seat in Mrs. Welch's class every day. And I have to say, she's amazing. So I know that we're all struggling. I'm struggling myself. I have some very miserable days, and that is no reflection on my children's teachers. I've seen the struggles and I've seen the success. I've definitely seen all of the tech issues and been part of them. But my big question was answered by you, Deb. I just wanted to know how the children were handling the protocols that were set in place, and specifically keeping the masks on, because I know for my kids, they said it's not an issue. I just wondered how their children were reacting.
We're all wearing them. And remember, it's easier for me to make your kids wear a mask than it is for you to make your kids wear a mask.
Great.
And it's only because I'm not their mother. It's not that I'm not.
The magic touch. Any other questions for Dr. Reineman while we have her? I can't see Colleen. Oh, there you are. Okay. Are we good? All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's your first report concluded. So, thank you. Really
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Okay, next on the agenda, we have the Assistant Superintendent, Ms. McCoy.
Great, thank you very much. So I would like to just give you an overview of kind of our teaching and learning goals for the year and our work from the summer and how we use those 10 days to launch what Dr. Reineman just spoke about is actually happening now. So Brooke, is it okay if I share my screen? Okay. So this is the same presentation that the teachers caught on their first day back with us. And it just goes over where we started and where we're going. The objective of those 10 days was to make sure that the faculty had the training and the tools and the time that they needed to prepare for a successful school year. As we know, this spring felt like we were drinking from a fire hydrant. There was lots of information coming at us. People were sharing ideas. There was expectations being put upon us and changing rapidly, and it just felt like we were entirely underwater. So our goal was to create systems and structures and learning opportunities to avoid feeling like this as we return to school this fall. So after 61 days of remote learning this spring, 230 workshop days this summer, and 19 district-sponsored workshops, as well as our 56 educators who worked on the teaching and learning subcommittee of the task force this summer, we came together and created goals for Remote Learning 4.0, which I know has been a question you've asked in the past of how does learning this fall differ from learning in the spring. So briefly, our goals, number one, above anything else, is the safety, social emotional wellness, and equity opportunities for our students, making sure that we're meeting all of their needs, whether it's special education, general education, ELL. Consistency, that it's easy for students and parents and families to navigate the learning management systems, to find work, to set a schedule. And that there's increased contact time for students throughout the day with their teachers, again, on a set schedule, that we're focusing the curriculum. We know that we can't meet all of the standards, so which standards matter most that we can really dive into and make sure the students know for the next grade level. How can we engage them in activities, both in online and in the classroom, that will get them excited about learning and interacting with each other? How can we assess students in a different manner, because some of the same diagnostic tests and benchmark tests and paper pencil tests that we're used to administering obviously don't apply here. So how can we be creative and give students new and different opportunities to show what they can do? Faculty collaboration, again, is super important as we're all learning and sharing new ideas and information. DS is top notch. We have an incredible faculty, and I'm just so proud of all that they've learned both independently and together as a team. Predictable communication is a goal, making sure that families and students are hearing regularly from their classroom teachers, from their schools, and from the district in a predictable manner. And last but certainly not least, making sure that we are taking care of ourselves as students, as parents, as educators, because if we do not take care of ourselves, learning is not going to be optimal. And as we learned in the spring, it's very easy for days to become nights, nights to become weekends. So how can we make sure that we separate learning from living so that we can make the most of both? So in order to make those goals happen, we have the expectations that were set forth through the MOU that was worked on jointly between the school committees and the union. We also created this instructional planner. As you saw with the fire hydrant, there was so much information being shared. So thanks to the Teaching and Learning Subcommittee, we culled all of that information and we organized it so that the most powerful resources are included in this document, which the teachers used this summer and throughout their 10 days of planning. So they can click on any of these tabs and get the most succinct and most robust resources to help them prepare for this year. And lastly, in terms of tools coming out of this spring, we asked all of the educators what apps they had discovered that they thought would be useful. And our tech integrators from all 4 schools came together over the summer and created the slideshow, which provides the top 20 apps, which our district has funded licenses for. And each app is connected with a slide that gives a brief overview of the program, how it's used, examples of how DS teachers are using it, and our tech integrators have been incredible with offering office hours to support their colleagues. In terms of the 10 days that we had before the students arrived, you'll see here we had Monday through Friday the first week, then we had Tuesday and through Friday after Labor Day, and of course the Monday, the day before students arrived. We tried to structure it so that the morning was a lot of the meetings and a lot of the learning and collaboration. We had formal trainings in the first hour, then faculty meetings, grade level meetings. After that, there was tech tutorials, time for faculty to try some of these top 20 apps and see if they appealed to them. The nurses made themselves available from 12 to 1 each day in the building so that educators could pop down and ask questions about protocols and safety and best practices. And then 12 to 3, we really tried to preserve for teacher prep time so they could work either independently or with their teams to actually take all of their learning and apply it. You know, as we know, we can take lots of classes and we can sit in meetings from 8 to 4, and then at 4:30 we say, hey, I didn't get any work done today. So we wanted to make sure that the teachers actually had time to apply what they were learning. And again, thanks to the help of our tech integrators at the end of the day, they were dropping office hours for people to ask questions, anything technology related. So we're hoping that this is what this year feels like compared to the fire hydrant last year. Some more structures, some more joy in learning, feeling a little bit more in control of the situation. And in order to make that happen, as you know, we have the professional growth and evaluation system. So as a system, we are proposing similar goals for our educators that will capture all of the work that they're already doing and keep us moving in the same direction as not to add another layer of work on top of all that they are doing already. So that's my presentation. The only other thing that I was planning to touch upon was the faculty and student devices. Thanks to the support of our district, all of our teachers have new laptops that allow them to obviously integrate with Seesaw and Google Classroom, but also have a touch screen so that they can demonstrate and draw for their students. Our 3 through 5 students obviously have access to Chromebooks. Our grade 2 students have iPads in hand, and we are working on getting the remainder of the iPads to our K and 1 students. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Colleen, do you want to go?
Thank you. And thank you for everyone's hard work. I think we've had a very successful rollout considering all of these variables being thrown at us daily. So good job to the whole team. I wanted to ask about the privacy, sort of what sorts of controls do we have on the technology? I know my son brought home an iPad today, and a fellow parent told me that I'm sorry, my children are underfoot, that she was able to access Apple's homepage for an Apple News homepage and a variety of other sites from just a short link away. So I just want to make sure that that's on everyone's radar, that the devices that are coming home, they're going to be, unattended with the kids at certain times, that we just make sure that all the same protocols that are in place when they're at school, especially the elementary school kids, that we make sure that those are the same level of security when they come home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for making that point, and I'm happy to circle back with our IT director. I do know that there is a security system that has been blanketed over all of the devices that are going home, so we can see what students are doing and obviously try to protect them from inappropriate sites. So while they might be able to access news or Apple here and there are lots of places where they can't go. And we have made sure that all of the apps and programs that we're using have signed the Student Privacy Alliance. In fact, we weren't using Flipgrid for a little bit, to everybody's dismay. Everybody loves Flipgrid, but until they signed that Privacy Alliance, we took it off the table. So we are being quite careful on who has access to our students' information.
Thanks, Colleen. Any other questions for Beth McCoy? Can I see everyone? No, you're okay, Mark? Leslie? Great, okay. Thank you, Beth. Next on our agenda, we're moving through, is Dr. Keogh and the superintendent's update. So I will throw it over to you.
Thank you, Brooke. Let me just apologize. I really don't know why my screen looks like I have snow all over it. I haven't seen snow like this since the TVs with the rabbit ear antennas, but I don't know if I'm coming across that way. But speaking of technology glitches, this is kind of a part of our world these days where things do not always go perfectly, and that's just part. It's just part of what all of the people on this this Zoom know. So yeah, it's hard to believe we're at week 2, and week 2 today. It to me seems like months that we've been doing this. We had the 10-day period, and then our students came on the was the 15th, and here we are. So we're not too deep into it, and I think we have. I would imagine that the learning that's gone on in the past month for our, especially for our educators, is exponential, and I'm really proud of the effort that's been put in by all of the folks over at Chickering and all of our schools. Really, it's just not been easy, and there's a lot of pressure to do a good job. We are Dover-Sherburne. There aren't too many type Bs or Cs in these communities. We're type As. We like to do a good job, and everyone is trying really hard. So I want to tip my hat to all the folks over there. I did get a chance to go over to Chickering with kids in the building in those early days, last or 2 weeks ago, and it was just such a great vibe. It was so nice to have the kids back after really, literally 6 months. To see the teachers with the kids, to see the kids flocking together, which we know is not something they're supposed to be doing, but they truly can't help themselves. So these are the kinds of challenges our teachers have. How do we keep our kids from naturally gravitating to each other, especially the little ones, but to watch them walking across the front walkway to their buses with their classes, it was amazing. In just a few short hours, how much work the teachers were able to do in terms of communicating with the kids the rights and the wrongs, and they were able to get on their buses, and it was really, it was a joy to see, and to see the parents, how many parents were waving just to say thanks. This has been a huge undertaking, and I think people know that. So it's been a great opening, and I just want to thank everyone for that. I wanted to talk a little bit about transportation and let people know that we are aware that there are long lines of traffic. I think pretty much everyone could have anticipated that based on the numbers of people who signed up for use of the buses. There weren't as many as typically there are. And so that means more car traffic. And but I want to thank Deb and Jim, and the Chief McGowan, I know, is over there quite a bit, helping out in the morning, directing those cars. all things considered, it's been pretty smooth at our elementary schools, all things considered. Dover at least has a loop, which is nice. Sherburne does not, so they sort of make a loop. So Sherburne's got a different set of challenges, but I want to thank all the folks in Dover for their patience with that. In terms of the buses, we are not at capacity. We do believe we can fit more riders. And I want to talk about that a little further when I talk about kind of the next steps for reopening. And I'll ask Dawn to weigh in on that once we get to that piece. I did want to let people know that we have done the HVAC assessment as planned and as mentioned at the joint school committee meeting in August, or was it September? August, I believe. And just to refresh people's memories, we did hire an engineering firm that specializes in heating and ventilation. They came out to assess all of our buildings across the district just to make sure that our systems are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and that in fact the air is moving through the buildings and the way it's supposed to, and that we're not at risk, because as we all know at this point, you know, with this virus, you do not need to be in rooms with stagnant air. That's not a good thing. And so we wanted confirmation from someone other than the people we contract for our repairs, because, you know, some might say that the people who do business with you are going to tell you what you want to hear. So we did hire an outside agency, and that work has been completed. Dawn met with those folks today. Dawn, maybe you can kind of bring us up to speed on what you learned today about the Chickering School.
Right, so I'm waiting for the written report, but the feedback that we have for Chickering is that there's really no major recommendations. The building is, in their eyes, modern building with modern systems, and so they were very comfortable with our systems and meeting the needs of the COVID regulations as far as air systems. So we'll have more information. We're trying to plan out whether or not we're going to bring this to the joint meeting in October or individual meetings. So we'll let you know once we have the written report, but they're going to provide us with an executive summary so that you can sort of see what the work that they did summarized, and some recommendations they may have for us. We've asked them to put their recommendations in such a way that for all of our schools, immediate recommendations, things we should do later in the fall, and then things that are long term. So at this point in time, I'm not anticipating anything on Chickering's recommendation list. It's anything that we need to address immediately.
So that was obviously good news. We were really excited about that. The other thing I wanted to mention before I talk about further reopening is the staffing update. And I know that Deb included it, so I had put that in my superintendent report. I know Deb had it in hers, so you could see that we've hired some wonderful people. We're really, really pleased with the folks that we've brought on board. Appreciate all the people who are working with these new folks, who are kind of showing them the ropes and teaching them about our culture. And I also wanted to mention that one of our remote teachers, I noticed, Deb, it probably came out before you submitted or after you submitted your report, that our remote teacher, Megan Scobie, is going to be taking a time off, and she's being replaced by Catherine Sarensen. Is that correct, Deb?
Yes.
So that was good news for us. She has a good understanding of the technology that we're using, and we see that as a positive thing, and we're happy to accommodate Megan as well. So what I would like to do, if it's okay with you, Brooke, is talk and maybe share my screen in a minute about the kind of the next phase of reopening for us. And just to bring people back, not that long ago, but maybe 6 weeks ago, we were talking about, it's probably more like 8 weeks ago, we were talking about this reopening and the hybrid model. And during that time, one of the questions from, or many questions really, were about how will we know whether we can go back in a more expanded way? At what point would we know that our kids could go back in full time, for example, or close to full time? And so in response to that, I made sure to talk about that in the reopening plan, or in the presentation of the reopening plan, by saying that at the 4 or 5 week mark, especially, really it was 4 weeks worth of data, which is what the doctors on our health and hygiene subcommittee, Dr. Vitale and Dr. Peterson, were recommending, that 4 weeks worth of data. But we started on the 15th, which was a Tuesday, so we weren't going to collect our first week of data the next day, and it comes out on Wednesdays. So it actually, 4 weeks worth of data bumps us out to October. Sorry, I don't have my calendar in front of me. Well, I'm going to show you in a minute so that everybody can see it. But it bumps us out to roughly the 14th, I believe. Yes. So yes, 4 weeks of data. So that's the 23rd, the 30th of September, the 7th of October, and the 14th of October. That's 4 weeks worth of data. But we also knew when we said that we're not going to say, hey, everybody, on October 13th, we're going to start back in person 4 days tomorrow. So that's not going to work for people, right? A lot of planning has to go into this. A lot of logistical planning has to go into it. Planning by families, planning by teachers for childcare. A lot has to go into this. So with that in mind, if we were to start thinking about that that last week of data, and by data I mean what are the rates like in Dover and Sherburne and in the state. That's a really important piece. It's not just about how things are going in Dover and Sherburne. It's how things are going in Dover and Sherburne and in the state. And so we are only in 2 weeks worth of data tomorrow. That will be our second week of data. So the third week would be the 7th and the fourth week would be the 14th. So we're watching it thus far. If the decision had to be made today, I think we would be in decent shape. But the plan was always the 4 weeks. That's the way I presented it to the community and to the joint school committees. And so that's what I'm sticking to. And it's not just me. That's what our health and hygiene kind of experts, and they really are experts, were recommending. So with that in mind, the Health and Hygiene Committee did put together a document that that kind of outlines how this should look. And that's what I would like to share right now. Just need to move something here so I can read my own thing. Okay, so so you can see that that the guiding principle behind this is really, we recognize, I can't emphasize this enough, we recognize that it's essential for the kids' intellectual, social, and emotional development to get them back in school. It's not necessary for people to email me to suggest that to me. I get it. I totally understand that. And I also understand, and we understand, that the more in-person we can get, the better. We also recognize that our younger students are not independent learners. They're all important factors, but they also have to be weighed against the risk of COVID-19 transmission in the community and in the schools. And just, you know, it doesn't take a degree in rocket science to know that those numbers are fluctuating quite a bit. Perhaps not so much in Dover and Sherburne, but in our state, they certainly are. Anyone who follows the news knows that hospitalizations are up, deaths are up, infections are up in our state as a whole. That does not mean it can't happen. It just means that this too is a factor that has to be weighed against the kids' intellectual, social, and emotional development. There's multiple pieces to this. And you also have to throw in there that, that there are the logistics, which I'll talk about in a moment. So this group, the Health and Hygiene Committee, what they want to consider in making decisions in this regard is, as I mentioned, community prevalence. And they want Dover-Sherburne's combined case rate averaged over 2 weeks to remain in green, which is defined as less than 4 cases per 100,000 for the 4 weeks prior to advancing to the next stage. That's pretty much what I just said. Testing capacity. They want the test positivity rate in the community to be below 2% for at least 2 consecutive weeks, which is an indicator of adequate testing capacity. We have contracted with a company that will allow us testing 5 per day for those who are symptomatic and who are recommended by the nurse to have that testing. Assuming they can't get it done quickly through a primary care physician, they can go to this organization. If we're going over that in requests, that would be a concern according to the Health and Hygiene Committee. School-based spread. So if we are seeing clusters in the system, and those are all bulleted here, we would need to obviously rethink this. So I guess what I'm saying is that we are talking about bringing kids back potentially, but we have to monitor this data every single week. And so it is far from hard and fast or etched in stone. I can't emphasize that strongly enough. And that's not me saying I'm not interested in bringing the kids back, because I'm the one who brought it up. I want the kids back. I know the youngsters especially need to be in school. It is something that's essential. But we also have educators who are potentially more at risk, who are coming in anyhow, and we have to consider them as well. So this is a complicated equation. As I mentioned before, there are definitely logistical requirements that need to be met as well. So, for example, can we fit our students in our classrooms? If we, for example, were to bring in kindergarten through 3rd grade, could we fit those students in our classrooms? Would we be able to schedule lunch and snacks to ensure that there was adequate distancing while these kids are unmasked? And would the bus schedules still work? Just for kind of perspective, our folks Dawn and some of the folks working at Conley, as well as some of our staff at the central office, have actually developed 156 bus routes as part of getting this opening off the ground. That's a ton of work. And so if you start talking about adding kids in, it complicates the equation. So these are the logistical things that we have to pay attention to. Frankly, I do believe we can get over those hurdles, at least for our first group. So I'm optimistic about that. The Health and Hygiene Committee talks about stages that there should be 4 weeks between stages. So stage 1 is what we're in right now. So that is, these are the kids who, all of our kids came in, planned to come in for 9:15, and then as a result of the issues with the high school students, we bumped the middle and high school to, the high school to 9:21. So that's stage 1 though, was getting everyone back in the hybrid model. Stage 2, which is what we're looking at now, is kids in grades K through 3 attending in-person school 4 days per week, with Wednesdays remaining a remote learning day. All the other grades in the system would remain in the current hybrid model. And you can see stage 3, we talk about grades 4 and 5 coming back in person, and same kind of situation in stage 4, middle and high school. Full returned in person 5 days a week would be stage 5. I am thankful to this team because they really did a ton of work thinking this through. They had to think about those 4 weeks of data that they really wanted before they would move to another phase or another stage. So obviously you can see in stage 1, the grades impacted are K through 12. And that's where we are currently. So stage 2, K through 3, again, 4 days total. Their proposed evaluation date would be that 4th week of data that I mentioned before, which is Wednesday, October 14th. We wouldn't bring students back on Thursday, the 15th. Our target would be more like October 19th. Now, again, there is a lot that has to be, there are a lot of pieces to this puzzle that really need to kind of integrate. And that's our target. That's what we're shooting for. That's what we would like to see done. That's what we said we wanted to see done. And we still believe we can do that. Again, you know, just last week when I was writing this up or working on this and giving feedback to the Health and Hygiene Committee, the numbers looked better than they did today. So it has to be really watched closely. And so that's the dilemma. There isn't, once again, there's not going to be an easy answer. And my greatest concern, frankly, is that no matter what, there's no way you can get around a situation like this. We are going to have some people who are going to get something arranged for their family, for childcare or something else, or for work, and suddenly it's going to change again. And that's my worst fear, and that's what we're trying to avoid. And that's why I'm bringing it up now, because I want people to start mentally preparing for themselves that if this data were to hold true, we would be looking to bring our kids back K through 3, 4 days a week on the 19th of October. So that's a lot to chew on that I just went through. And again, I want to thank Jill Fedor and Matt Vitale and Kay Peterson for putting this together and thinking this through for us. They've been such a godsend. I don't know where we would be without these guys. They did, in fact, run it by the Dover Board of Health and received support for that. And I believe the Sherburne Board of Health will be hearing about this tomorrow night. So we feel like we're on the right track. We need to obviously have conversations with the teachers further. We want to make sure that we can make this work with our teachers. They matter to us. We want to hear what concerns they might have, and I expect to discuss it further with the DSEA president and perhaps other members tomorrow, if at all possible. So that's really where we are. There's no way I could wait until the October 13th joint school committee meeting to roll this out. Likewise, I'm going to have to inform the Sherburne folks as well. And so we were lucky that Dover's meeting falls now so that I could give you guys a little bit more of a heads up than anyone else. So I'm open to your questions from the school committee, and then I would assume you'd want to have your community comments, Brooke.
Right. Okay, so I just want to thank you, Andrew. I just want to clarify too, before the committee asks questions, that we are not voting on what would happen next in terms of the phase 2, that is not under our purview. I think you can articulate that probably better than I can.
Well, it's not so much it doesn't pertain, it definitely does. What it is that you've already voted on it. This was something that I brought up as part of the opening plan, that we would look at this at the 4-week mark and have a plan for bringing back our youngest students first. That's what I said, and that's what this is. Okay. So you really already voted on it.
I just want to, just before members ask questions and make comments, just to make sure everybody understands that. Yep. And yeah, happy to open it up to members first. Regarding the phase 2 or any other of the points that Dr. Keough has raised. Let's go. Colleen, you haven't gotten yet, so you go first. I have to get the dog.
Thank you. I have a question about sort of how the curriculum would be changed if they were in person versus out, and how flexible we are with the curriculum as it stands now in terms of being in school or out. How easily is that adapted?
That's a great question, Colleen, and I'm probably going to pass it off to Beth, but I do know that part of the planning of the Teaching and Learning Committee was to develop a system that was flexible so that we could shift gears quickly. And so I think we're prepared for that, but Beth, do you want to elaborate on that, or maybe Deb?
I can start, and then Deb, if you want to add anything. I would just say that, this has been part of the plan all along, and given that, educators traditionally work with small groups of students in the workshop model, it's a lot more difficult to do that online, and that's why oftentimes you see that Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday for remote teachers are taken up by small group sessions, while other students are left to work independently, whereas in the school building, that can happen simultaneously with teachers and educational assistants kind of circulating through the stations. So I think the curriculum wouldn't necessarily change. I just think it would give teachers a lot more options in terms of how they deliver it. And I would argue that the pace of curriculum covered would increase as well.
If I could add to that, I know that Deb, you may say this, but Deb has said to me that in my very brief conversation with her about this, because we're really in the preliminary stages here, but that many teachers, and I know Barb Brown has said this as well, many teachers have expressed that the remote teaching is for the young kids is really tough. It's not just tough for the parents, it's tough for the teachers too. So I haven't polled the teachers. I know that change is hard for all of us, and it might be incredibly disruptive, but the fact that it would be in person versus remote might be attractive to some of our teachers of the early kids. I don't know, what would you say to that, Deb?
I agree with what both Beth and Andrew said. I would add that teachers are finding the pace is much slower remote as we've gotten started than perhaps we'd hoped. And part of that is just managing the remote piece of it. So I think that they would welcome an opportunity. So again, the curriculum wouldn't change, the pace might.
That's a good question, Colleen. And I think, is Brooke back? Yes.
For the limit. Thanks, Colleen. Yes, Sarah, you're up next.
Well, first a comment, which is that I really appreciated Dr. Keough back when we first, were examining the hybrid plan that you had raised, prioritizing our youngest learners and our students with special needs for greater in-person instruction, because I think we all understand that is the group that has the most to lose in the remote setting. And as I understand it from the emerging public health data, that hopefully it's also the group that poses sort of the least risk in terms of transmission and in terms of suffering any ill effects if in the unfortunate event that someone were to become ill. So I really do appreciate this as a very thoughtful approach, a staged approach. The fact that there are defined metrics, I think that this really gives our community a lot to absorb, and it's a very thoughtful approach. I think there is a tension between wanting to be very deliberate and not wanting to rush into anything, and a fear that a lot of us have about what the later fall and winter will bring, and not wanting to lose the window that we have now. But I personally feel that this is a very reasonable approach. I don't want to put Dr. Reineman on the spot, but maybe I will if that's okay. But I'm just curious from the logistics hurdle. I don't know if you've had enough of a chance to kind of think through having K-3 in person 4 days a week would impact sort of the spacing in the classrooms, the spacing in the cafeteria, how feasibly that group of students could be accommodated on the buses, how it impacts an already busy pickup and drop off you know, just curious of any early kind of reactions, understanding that there is a lot that needs to be worked through.
Certainly. So we've been buzzing and starting to think about it. There's no way that I have all the answers. So you're welcome to put me on the spot, but I won't have them all. So one of the nice things about hybrid is we have lots of space. So in having 2 classrooms, we have, for example, 2 sinks to wash hands in. Now we'll have just 1 with the lower grades. In terms of the classroom space, our teachers have done an amazing job with fitting in 18, 19, 20, and some classes 21 students in the room. It gets tight when you get up to the 21 and the 22s. So we'll have to, you know, do some rearranging potentially there. Spaces I can see we need a lot more time to think about include the cafeteria, because we're set up now to have 80 students in the cafeteria. We can't fit more. The buses, some of them are more full than others. Some of them are nearly capacity, not all, but some. Pick up and drop off. So far, our neighbors have been very accommodating, but we may have to think about a staggered pick up and drop off, which would just bring a different circus to the morning and afternoon. Recess, I think we're fine for space. Hallways, I'm not too worried about, but there's lots to think about. And you can probably smell the wood burning as we're thinking about all of this.
It is, you know, Sarah, I really appreciate your comments. It has been on my mind a lot, and I recognize that. I guess maybe it's because I was the parent of 3 children myself, and we were both working parents, and I can't even imagine. I really can't imagine how hard it's been on our younger teachers, or our teachers of the younger children, and our teachers who are raising kids themselves, and our parents with these younger kids. To me, it is such a huge challenge. There just isn't an easy answer, because believe me, I'm one for looking for the easy way out. I would much prefer an easy option here. There just isn't one, but I'm also not going to bury my head in the sand and pretend that I didn't say that. I said it and I meant it, and we are going to try and do this. And I agree with you that was part of my thinking, that from studies I had seen in Europe and studies here in this country about the prevalence in the younger kids, it is much lower from what I have read. All of that said, this is why I said it before, you know, we do have these issues, and Dawn is really the one to talk about the buses. I was going to ask her what she thought about the buses, because that's one of those logistical hurdles that might be big.
So we've already started, we're taking attendance this week on our buses. We do feel like there's capacity on the buses. We're just trying to figure out what that capacity is. We feel like some people have signed up for buses but aren't utilizing, so that's where we're trying to get a better feel of the actual numbers. We looked at the buses today. There's very few of your 10 buses that we don't think we can combine right now and be within capacity. It may be maneuvering 1 or 2 of the buses, but some days the buses that are heavier on Monday, Tuesday are lighter on Thursday, Friday. So that's why we do feel like we have the potential to combine. We may be in a situation though that we'd be looking for volunteers. So if we have an issue with capacity, we may reach out and say, is this something that you really require the transportation, or is there some flexibility with potentially having people drive versus taking the bus? But I think we'll attack each bus individually. Again, we're already starting on this process. We want to make it as smooth as possible. So that's our job for the next couple of weeks, is to reevaluate that and bring something forward that would be a seamless startup on October 19th.
Thanks, Don. And I think that, I know I've probably emphasized it far too many times, but again, my worry is that I'm going to be the person who has to call or email people and say, the numbers are just in and it's not going to work. That worries me, because I know people will have to make these arrangements. I don't know of any other way to do it. And if people have suggestions on how we might do that, let me know. I think cutting it to the 19th from the 15th, if that's our 4th week of data, and we're going to the 19th, that's about as close as you can get. So what I would promise is that on that day, that 4th week of data comes out, is that I would tell people where we are exactly then. And that, of course, I would not be making that decision in isolation. That would be with the input of the doctors that we're working with, and of course the boards of health. So that's pretty much where we are, Brooke.
Yeah, let me just see if anyone else has questions before we let you go. It's a lot to digest, and a lot of moving parts, and a lot of competing, priorities. So that's not lost on anyone here. Do you, Leslie or Mark, are you digesting, or do you have any questions? Leslie?
I mean, I want to confirm that the grade 4 and 5, it's set in stone that we have to wait another 4 weeks of statistics for that, or is there any slight possibility of them going back earlier than that?
That particular piece, Leslie, was not that was not my idea, so I would need to circle back with the health and hygiene folks. I just didn't ask them to come tonight. Maybe I should have. So I don't really know the answer to that off the top of my head. I think based on my conversations with Matt, and remember, Matt is currently a doctor at Brigham and Women's, where they just had a cluster. And so he's pretty close to this. I think he just feels like without that 4 weeks solid foundation, we would be moving too quickly. That was my take in talking to him, but I can get back to you on that separately. I'll let you know what he says.
Great.
Good question.
Thank you.
Anything else at this point? Colleen, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I was wondering if there's any thought given to portable classrooms being brought to the premises for the use of, spreading out if we were to bring in larger groups of kids, or to other buildings that would be available to us for that use.
That's a good question. We've never really discussed that at length, because once we figured out, certainly not for Chickering, once we figured out that we could fit all of our classes at our current sizes if everyone came in, and remember, not everyone is coming in currently. We have remote students, so that's bringing our class sizes down. But even if everyone was in, we believed we could do it. So we never really went down the road of portable classrooms. If for additional spaces, would we look at it just because it would be nice to spread people out? I suppose, but it's expensive, and I don't even, there's a whole permitting process that goes along with that. It's not that easy to do, but I don't think we could take that off the table.
Sorry. Okay. Anyone else? Before I open it to community comments. You guys all set? Yes? Okay. Okay, well, let's move then, now that we're digesting all of this, to the community comment section. Is that okay, Dr. Keogh?
Absolutely.
Okay. Let me just read the little paragraph, just the logistics of it all. To remember, the community comments are an opportunity for us to listen to members of the community. It's not a forum for answering questions or engaging in a debate, and we will not be answering any questions tonight. We respectfully request that you please make your comments brief and that you move the discussion forward by adding new information. And as we always say, once the public comment section of the meeting has been concluded, we will move on to other business, and comments from the community will no longer be permitted. So now that you've all had a chance to hear these reports, are there any community comments? Can someone help me to see? I am going through, but if if in case I missed someone, if you can just pop up and say your name and your town, or say your student. Anyone?
I don't see anyone, Brooke.
You don't?
Yeah, no hands raised.
Okay.
That means that I was really clear.
Well, I think,
Because I know there were questions out there for sure.
yeah.
Sending emails.
If I can just interject, I just know myself included, these parents with young kids are going to be thrilled, and that their kids are going back in.
We hope.
Potentially.
We hope.
Okay, yes, we did know there were questions about that, so that's why we held the community comments till after. But as long, as always, you can reach out to your school committee members, and I'm sure there will be further discussions with our educators and the DSCA as well.
Brooke, I do see one hand up if there's still a chance. I think it might be Ami.
Yeah, that's me. I couldn't change my name once I got on. That's my daughter. So this is Ami Tajani.
Okay.
I just wanted to say thank you all so much for the work you've done. And I know all the school committee members are saying the same thing, but I wanted to echo that, and we really appreciate the teachers, Dr. Reineman, Mr. Carnes, the school committee, Andrew. All of you have done an excellent job. I really appreciate you thinking through about this next stage. So thank you.
Thanks, Ami.
Thank you. Any other comments before? I don't want to cut anyone off. Does anyone see anyone? No?
Hey, Brooke.
Yes, who's that?
Sorry, I'm getting my camera going. It's Rochelle, sorry. I just thought of a question, which is if the younger kids went back 4 days, what would happen to the SPED staff?
I don't think we're going to answer questions.
Oh, sorry, you're not going to answer questions. Okay, so I would ask the administration to consider
where did you go?
the service providers and therapists and how they would be affected. They serve K through 3 and 4 and 5. Thank you.
Okay, yes, thank you, Rochelle. And we'll take note of that comment question, and that's helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else? Okay, well, a lot to take in. Thank you, everyone. I think we're going to move on now to Ms. Vittoria's warrant report, and we will regroup on this as we get more data.
Brooke, can I add one more thing before we pass it on to Dawn that I just forgot to mention? So the plan would be to notify as soon as I am able to communicate with the DSEA, and the sooner I can get some of these logistical things nailed down, it would be to communicate with our families this exact plan, with our families and with our staff. So again, sooner rather than later. So that potentially would be the end of this week or the latest Monday. Just want to mention that. I'm not sure I got that clearly out before, so.
Okay. Okay, Dawn, do you want to take the warrant
Sure.
from now?
Yeah, I'll jump into the financial reports for a change of pace. So you have your warrant report. You have all the warrants that were signed since your last meeting in June. And you'll note that those go through June 30th. And then we've listed for your review all the fiscal year 21 warrants, which cover July through the last one on your report, September 22nd. Again, I think Mark has been your signer right now, so I thank him for showing up at Town Hall and signing the warrants. And if you, again, ever have any questions on any of these, they're available for review at Town Hall, but also we keep copies here.
Dawn, do you need someone, Dawn and Mark, do you need someone else to be backup?
That would probably be up to Mark's flexibility now.
Yeah, because typically we do. Is it Leslie, are you the backup? I don't have my, you are, okay. You might want to take Colleen or Sarah with you at some point, just so they can.
Okay, perfect. I'll extend the invitation next time I go, and
you know, just we could add a third person if that could be helpful.
I think that's a great idea for next year too.
Okay.
A little exposure.
Sorry, Dawn.
Yeah, that's fine. So moving on to your fiscal year 20 budget closeout. So we're really in line with where we reported your financials were in your last meeting in June. As I summarized for you, we actually have salary savings of a little over 200,000. Half of that's attributable to post-budget staffing changes that we've been communicating to you since a year ago, last September. And we add to that some savings from the closure, and that we had unused substitute and custodial overtime. So it crept up a little bit over the year as the year progressed, but basically you're ending with salary savings of a little over 200,000. On the expenditure side, that definitely increased from where we were reporting pre-closure, because we did see substantial savings in both your transportation and utilities due to the closure. So that number is a little over $100,000 savings for operating expenditures. As we have been communicating, I think since about last September, we did experience a overage in or a negative variance in our out of district. We had budgeted for 30 placements, and we ended up with 36. Within that, as I think I've presented to you throughout the year, there was a lot of ins and outs, so it's not a straight look at. You really have to understand the detail, and then keep in mind that all of those new placements that we had in fiscal year 20 that were unbudgeted, we did pick those up, and they're in your fiscal year 21 budget. Our circuit breaker reimbursement as of June 30th was $1,159,455. Remember that we offset that against your operating budget. So you budget 100% for out of district. So at the end of the year, we're giving back 100% of circuit breaker plus another extra $100,000 of your net from operations. So the operating surplus that's being returned to the town is the $1,270,796. That should make the warrant people on the meeting fairly happy. The other piece of information that's in your packet is your summary of special revenue funds. And just one thing I wanted to point out to you, because I don't think we've been able to formally talk about this, but that the playground resurfacing project did take place at the end of June. And if anyone's had an opportunity to go over and take a look, it definitely freshened that up. It looks much more cohesive, and it was a great addition to the playground. And it's a good thing that it happened now, because it just seems like it's a cleaner surface because we don't have the patches, and we actually replaced some of the timber borders, so that makes it look fresh and updated. So we want to thank the PTO again for their contribution towards that. But you will see in your special revenue revolving funds, we indicate that 30,000 of that project was covered through your building rental fund, and $7,500 went through your gift fund, with offset by the $5,000 that PTO did contribute.
I want to go back to the days when resurfacing the playground was the biggest.
I know, right?
Seems like such sweet times, isn't it?
Exactly.
Okay. So do we know, Don, what percentage of the circuit breaker did we end up getting back?
75%. So we were at state mandated funds, yeah.
Okay.
A state mandated rate of 75%. Yeah. So what's unknown as we sort of like gravitate to fiscal year 21 updates a little bit, that's obviously the state budget picture is a little unsure. We do know that as far as chapter 70, which you don't see that number necessarily, but the town does. They did sort of keep that at the fiscal year 20 rate. So we didn't see the decreases in that funding source that we initially thought when they first started talking. They are hoping to have circuit breaker somewhere near the mandated amount, but just keep in mind, we had talked a little bit about the SOA was going to start reimbursing us for out of district transportation. That probably we're not probably going to see that this year. So although that was a much hyped sort of new angle for reimbursement, it's highly unlikely that they'll be able to reimburse all the tuition out of district at 75%. And if there's no money left, they can't move on and do something for transportation. So that we'll just have to wait and play out. We're scheduled to get our first circuit breaker payment first quarterly payment sometime next week, and we'll get a feel of where the state's coming. I'm not sure at this point what the rate of prepayment's going to be. Obviously, they'll give us an advancement, and then at the end of the year, as you know, we'll sometimes true up, or usually go up because they have extra money. We don't know where that's gonna fall, so we'll keep you updated at your next meeting as to what that rate looks like. Okay. As far as where we are with just all the additional expenses that we've incurred, keep in mind that we did receive the reopening grant, which for Chickering was a little over $90,000. So we have been using that. The town has also allowed us to make use of their municipal cares funding. So right now, all your technology that was unbudgeted. So we had already in our operating budget approved some. We started the replacement cycle for the educators' devices, not for all of them. So the ones that we had not budgeted for, the town has allowed us to use their CARES funding for that. In addition, any of the K2 iPads that Chickering needed to purchase was also covered by the municipal cares funding of the town. So that is leaving a little bit more of your money, the reopening grant that came directly to the school to cover things like the PPE, the tent rental, additional staffing we may need. And so that's been a nice cushion for us to be able to not have to go into your operating budget to cover some of these COVID-related expenses. Again, the only thing that we can charge to these reopening grants are things that are specifically related to COVID, and it can't be anything that we had already budgeted for. So that's why some of the technology still went to your operating fund, because we had budgeted for it. I'll have a better feel of where we are financially. As you know, the staff is continuing to sort of move around a little bit, so I'm waiting for that to settle, and we'll show your first result of operations to date at your October meeting. But I don't sense that we are in any kind of financial issues at this point in time, which is great news.
Yeah. And that includes, Don, the next item, which we'll get to in a sec, the Remote Learning Enrichment Center falls under that as well, correct?
Yeah, so right now we are charging the expense of that to the reopening grant.
Okay, okay. All right.
And just on capital's on there, as you were, I mean, it's hard to believe, but the town's already looking for our capital ask. I literally have not had time to take a peek.
They asked again today, so.
So we typically get an extension of at least a week or two anyway, and I will touch base with the town of Dover, because we don't send it to them until your committee has an opportunity to vote for it at your October meeting. So we will try to get a preliminary. Again, we have our 5-year plan, so it's going back and just revisiting that. Remember that your project for this year that we had approved was the flooring, and that we postponed that because the town actually didn't have their town meeting until the end of June. So we have that we still have to address in this coming year, and we'll take a look at what was on the docket for fiscal year 22 in our 5-year plan, and probably bring that forward to the committee in October. And we always have about a 2-month time frame that we can still refine that as things go along, and hopefully they'll be considerate of just what we've had on our plate, and that we haven't really had time to dive into fiscal year 22 capital quite yet.
I was hoping the same, yes, thank you. Okay, any questions for Dawn? She's always so thorough. It's hard to pry anymore. Are we all set? You guys good? Okay. Okay, yeah, Dawn, let me know. And who's it? Mark, who's the capital person?
Yeah, Mark, right?
Mark,
yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you can circle back with us. Okay, thank you, Dawn. That leads us to right nicely into the next item, which is the Remote Learning Enrichment Center. Dr. Keogh supplied a memo in our packet. I don't know if you want to say anything else about it, Dr. Keogh, before it's something we do have to vote on, even though, as we just heard, the funding is coming from the reopening grant. But I think it's just a point of support or something?
Well, so I kind of, I apologize. I went forward with this idea and then realized that the commissioner had said it needed to go through the school committees for support. I didn't expect it to be a fight with the school committee because it's really, we're doing something for members of our community, and it actually is coming at a minimal cost to us and is great benefit to the teachers who serve in Dover and Sherburne's kids. So there are students anyhow. So yeah, I was hoping for your support on this. It's affecting 10 kids, basically. And by the way, I want to thank Kate McCarthy, our Director of Student Services. She did a great job with this. She really did. And she offered to take it on, which I really, really appreciate. So.
Does anyone have any questions about the Remote Learning Center based on what you saw in your packet? Colleen?
Thank you. Is there any discussion of expanding it beyond 10 children? Would it possibly include kids that are non-traditional learners or have other, special needs that make it so that they could be included?
So right now we're required to provide those services, Colleen, by the state for our non-traditional learners or more challenged students. We do have some who don't qualify for that additional time, and I think that's probably who you're referring to. And we haven't talked about that. I think what we're mostly concerned about is potentially opening up Pandora's box, because there's a lot of need out there, and we're not sure we can meet all those needs. Folks have had their daycare centers close, and so they're looking. I think most people have worked out a lot of that stuff, but so we really never really thought about expanding it. That doesn't mean we couldn't think about it. I'm not sure logistically that we could pull it off, especially if we're going to be potentially losing space soon.
And just to clarify, they're really not getting instruction. They're just given a place to participate in their remote instruction because of childcare needs.
Right. Right. There's no teaching that's part of this, really. It's just supervision.
And in my understanding, is it correct? It wasn't like it was capped at 10 students or anything. That was the demand, right? Yeah. Okay.
Right. So these are teachers predominantly who teach in other school systems, and their union leaders were supposed to tell them that within your home community, you may have this option. The commissioner just simply said it would be a nice to do if it's at all feasible. That's the way he presented it. And we thought about it and thought it is potentially feasible for us, and that's why we did it. It's not straining the system in any way. It's just basically a good deed for these families of people who are teachers who live in town who have childcare issues.
Any other questions?
Again, Brooke, one other thing on that, the reason for that is because the commissioner understood that we can't afford to not have teachers come back to teaching. That was the great concern, and it still is a great concern. A lot of places have seen 14, 15, 20 teachers not returned. That's a huge hit to the system. So this was designed to try and help alleviate some of that.
Is there any sense how many other towns kind of undertook the same kind of program?
I really don't know. I know that, I don't know. I know that Carol Kavanaugh, the superintendent in Hopkinton, was the person who generated the idea. And I'm a member of the Tri-County Superintendents Association. It's an 18-town group of superintendents. And in that group, I would say 70 to 80% were going to try and do it. Then he caught wind of it, the commissioner that is, and said, we should try this across the state. It makes sense. And so I really don't know. I don't have any hard numbers. I'm guessing maybe 50%.
Okay. Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Do I have a motion to approve the establishment of the remote or Yes, their establishment of the Remote Learning Enrichment Center. Leslie, do you have a second? Mark? Any discussion? Okay. Yes, Mark.
I just want to add one comment, and I just simply want to say I appreciate that Dover-Sherburne has shown leadership here. It's not something we needed to do, but it shows a real respect for the profession and for teachers and the task they have to do their job well. So thank you.
Yes, I agree.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to do a roll call in the order of which I see you. Sarah?
Sarah Gutierrez Dunn, yes.
Leslie?
Leslie Leon, yes.
Colleen?
Colleen Burt, yes.
And Mark?
Mark Healy, yes.
And Brooke Matarese, yes. And thank you.
Thanks, everyone. You're muted, Brooke.
Sorry. The last item I have is the consent agenda, which includes just the minutes of June 24th. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Leslie, do I have a second? Sarah? Any discussion? Okay, I do a roll call again. Sarah?
Sarah Gutierrez Dunn, yes.
Leslie?
Leslie Leon, yes.
Colleen?
Colleen Burt, yes.
And Mark?
Mark Healy, yes.
And Brooke Matarese, yes. Okay. And then the last item in your packet is the communications for members' information. You'll see the 2021 meeting calendar. Mark, I assume there will be some additional meetings around the superintendent search committee. Do you have any dates or?
Yes, we'll send communications out by the end of this week and towards next week for focus group dates and survey options. So those dates will be there. And then we have meeting dates that still have to be agreed upon.
Okay. Okay, so those will be additional dates on that calendar. The subcommittee assignments, and I want to thank Sarah, who reached out to take on the subcommittee, our representative on the, I don't know what you're calling it exactly yet, maybe you don't either, but the diversity and inclusion task force, that will be.
Yes. Oh, so Sarah's going to be the representative from Dover. That's awesome. Thank you, Sarah.
Yes, thank you, Sarah.
I think you actually told me that, Brooke, and I think I wrote that down. I'm going to make sure.
That's okay. I know there's probably a lot to write down. But we're, yes, if you could include her on any, forthcoming communications, that would be great.
Yeah, perfect.
And then the Sherburne School Committee minutes of June 24th.
Brooke, can I just ask if any of these dates have changed?
I don't think so. I checked them against my calendar when I got them, and they were the same. Just make sure you pay very close attention to the time, because in the last few years we started to piggyback, before or after the region, or so the times can be a little funky sometimes. So I don't think so, Leslie. They seem to jive with what I had already written down. So
Okay, great.
I hope that's the case. And I guess we'll see about Zoom or not Zoom. That's a Board of Health, recommendation about meetings, and we'll let y'all know, as we go forward how that works. And so we get to adjourn. So thank you, everyone, for being here. I guess I have to poll to adjourn, right?
Yeah.
Right, Ron? Okay. So do I have a motion to adjourn? Leslie, a second. Colleen, everybody just raise your hand. Yes. Okay, great. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, all the educators who were here. And Deb and Jim and Andrew and Bethy and Don. You've had a long, long, long day, I know. So we really appreciate you being here and digesting all of this with us. And we really are so grateful for all of you. So
Yes.
just stay in this together and get through it.
Oh,
Okay?
we appreciate the support from all of you as well. It's a team effort. So thank you very much.